Most companies obsess over profit margins. Meta just did the opposite. The company announced a massive push into cloud computing infrastructure, and Wall Street didn't punish them. Investors actually celebrated. But here's what shocked analysts. Meta knows this move will slash their profit margins significantly. Cloud computing runs on wafer-thin margins, usually 15 to 25% instead of Meta's current 40% plus. So why would a company voluntarily agree to make less money per dollar of revenue? The answer reveals why the AI arms race has forced big tech into an entirely new playbook. Meta isn't the only one doing this either. Amazon Web Services started in AWS. Google built its data centers. Apple controls its chip design. All of them accepted lower margins to control their destiny. But Meta is doing something different. They're racing to become a cloud provider not just for themselves, but as a weapon in the broader AI competition. The stakes, nothing less than who owns the infrastructure powering the next generation of artificial intelligence. For investors and tech enthusiasts, this is the moment the industry transformed. Wall Street sees it clearly now. Meta isn't trying to beat Amazon or Microsoft at cloud hosting. They are trying to guarantee they'll never lose the computing power they need to train and run their next-generation AI models. And they are willing to sacrifice billions in annual profit margins to make it happen. Here's the thing about artificial intelligence. The models that power it are hungry, incredibly hungry. Training large language models isn't like running a spreadsheet. It requires tens of thousands of GPUs working in sync for weeks or months. Those GPUs cost tens of millions of dollars. They generate enormous heat and need custom power, cooling, and networking. A few years ago, Meta could rent capacity from Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. But demand became insane. During the AI boom, every tech company wanted to train their own models. Cloud capacity dried up, wait times stretched, prices skyrocketed. Then supply chain fragility hit hard. One production hiccup at TSMC could delay your entire AI roadmap by months. That's when Meta realized renting capacity is a luxury they can't afford anymore. If Meta doesn't own its own infrastructure, they are dependent on someone else's goodwill. Amazon owns AWS and prioritizes Amazon's needs. Google owns Google Cloud and prioritizes Google. Neither company will sacrifice their own interests to guarantee Meta gets GPU time. So Meta made the call, build it themselves. Own the data centers, power, cooling, the entire stack. Sure, it'll be less profitable, but it guarantees Meta controls their destiny in the AI arms race. So what does Meta's cloud push actually look like? The company is investing hundreds of billions of dollars in new infrastructure. They are building data centers globally, not just in the United States, but in countries across Europe and Asia. Each facility houses tens of thousands of GPUs, Nvidia's H100s, H200s, and their newest B100 chips. These aren't toys. A single H100 costs $30,000 to $40,000. A data center with 100,000 of them is a $3 to $4 billion facility before you add power, cooling, and real estate. Meta's building dozens of these. The company recently announced they are spending over $60 billion on AI infrastructure in a single year. That's not investment in servers alone, it's the entire stack. Power generation, because data centers consume electricity like small cities. They need cooling systems because 50,000 GPUs generate heat equivalent to a commercial blast furnace. They need custom networking gear to shuffle data between GPUs fast enough that the training doesn't bottleneck. They're even building their own chips now. Meta developed the MTIA chip, Meta Training and Inference Accelerator. It's not as powerful as an Nvidia H100, but it costs less. And crucially, Meta owns it. That matters because if Nvidia supply tightens, Meta has an alternative. This is the kind of vertical integration that defined Apple, controlling every layer from chip design to software. Meta's doing the same thing for AI. But here's where the real story gets interesting. Meta isn't building all this just for internal use. They're also offering it as a service. The company's launching Meta Cloud, a cloud computing platform that other companies can rent access to. Think of it as Meta's answer to Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud, but with a strategic twist. Meta will offer it at competitive rates, maybe even below what Amazon and Google charge. Why? Because Meta wants market share, but also because they can afford to. With their own infrastructure, Meta has lower costs than cloud providers who have to buy from Nvidia and other suppliers. They're arbitraging the supply chain. Meanwhile, other AI companies like Anthropic, Stability AI, and smaller labs are literally begging for access to GPU clusters. They can't build their own infrastructure. They can't compete with Meta's capital, but they'll pay Meta's cloud rates. This creates a new revenue stream for Meta. It won't match their advertising margins, nothing ever will, but it's better than pure break-even. And here's what Wall Street loves about this. Meta's cloud offering has the potential to become a multi-billion-dollar business. Some analysts project it could eventually rival a third or half of Amazon's cloud revenue. That's a massive market. And it's emerging at precisely the moment when AI is becoming the next gold rush. The companies that control the picks and shovels, the infrastructure, win. Let's talk margins, the number that Wall Street obsesses over. Meta's current advertising business runs at around 40% gross margins. That's elite. For every dollar of revenue, 40 cents stays as gross profit after cost of goods sold. It's why Meta has become a cash printing machine. Cloud computing, it's a completely different beast. Amazon's AWS, which is the most profitable cloud provider, runs at roughly 30% gross margins. Microsoft Azure is similar. Google Cloud is still unprofitable as a standalone business. They haven't disclosed exact margins, but it's somewhere around 10 to 20% depending on the year. So Meta's entering a market where the best player makes 30% margin instead of Meta's current 40%. That's a haircut. But here's why Wall Street still celebrated. The scale of cloud is enormous. Amazon's entire business is worth around $2 trillion in market cap. AWS alone, the cloud division, probably represents $300 to $500 billion of that value. Microsoft's market cap is similar, and Azure is a massive part of that. If Meta can grab even 5% of the global cloud market, that's tens of billions in new revenue. Even at 25% margins instead of 40%, tens of billions matters. The math works because the market is so big. Lower margins times enormous scale still equals growth. That's what analysts are betting on. So what does Meta's cloud Gambit mean for the broader AI race? Everything. This is the infrastructure layer of the AI wars. Right now, Nvidia makes the best chips, but Nvidia's supply is limited. If you want to train a cutting-edge model, you either need capital to buy Nvidia's chips, or you need a friend who owns them. This creates a bottleneck. Companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Mistral have funding, but they're all fighting for the same limited GPU supply. The wealthy win. Meta's play changes the equation. By building their own infrastructure, Meta guarantees they'll never be starved for compute. They can train new models, iterate faster, and deploy at scale. That's an advantage. But here's the twist. Meta's also offering that infrastructure to others. Anthropic could train Claude not on AWS, but on Meta's cloud. That might sound counterintuitive. Why would Meta help a competitor? But remember, Meta's business is advertising. More competitors training on their infrastructure means more customers paying for cloud access. It's a win for Meta because they capture margin from compute rather than just from their own models. It also prevents Amazon from monopolizing AI infrastructure access. Right now, OpenAI has deep ties to Microsoft. Google controls its own cloud. But smaller AI startups are trapped depending on Amazon. Meta, offering an alternative, democratizes access to compute. And Wall Street loves when you disrupt a competitor's monopoly while building your own empire. If you're an investor or someone watching Meta's stock, what should you be tracking? First, capital efficiency. Meta's spending over $60 billion annually on infrastructure. That's money not going to dividends or buybacks. You want to see that investment paying off. Watch Meta Cloud's customer growth. Which companies are renting compute from Meta? How much revenue is coming from third-party cloud sales versus internal use? These numbers aren't fully disclosed yet, but they'll matter. Second, execution risk. Building world-class data centers is hard. Getting power contracts right takes expertise. Cooling systems fail. Networking can bottleneck. Any major outage would damage Meta's credibility as a cloud provider. Watch their uptime reports once they release them. Third, competitive response. Amazon's AWS is probably watching Meta very carefully. Amazon could drop Azure prices to compete. They could offer exclusive deals to startups. The cloud market is already competitive. Now it's getting more intense. Meta's margins could compress further if there's a price war. Fourth, the regulatory angle. Governments worldwide are getting nervous about tech companies owning too much infrastructure. The European Union and the United States both watch vertical integration by big tech closely. Meta controlling chips, data centers, and software across the AI stack might attract scrutiny. Watch for any regulatory challenges. Finally, the AI model payoff. None of this infrastructure spending matters if Meta doesn't ship incredible AI products. Their models need to compete with OpenAI's and Anthropic's offerings. Here's what this all means. The AI industry just crossed a threshold. It's not enough to be smart anymore. You need to be rich enough to own the entire stack. Nvidia makes chips, but that's only part of the equation. You need capital, infrastructure, data, and talent. Meta has all four. So does Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. But most other companies don't. This is going to concentrate AI development even further into the hands of a few giant companies. Wall Street sees that Meta's willing to play the long game, spending $60 billion a year to guarantee they'll never lose a compute war, and investors respect that. Lower margins are just the price of admission to the AI future. So what should you watch? Track Meta Cloud's growth. Watch whether the infrastructure investment starts translating into better AI models. Follow the regulatory environment. Governments hate when companies get too big. And keep an eye on whether smaller AI companies can even survive in a world where Meta, Amazon, and Google own the compute infrastructure. The cloud computing war is now an AI war, and it's about control more than profit margins. If you want to stay ahead of how this tech stuff really works, where the money flows, and why companies make these moves, make sure you're subscribed. Follow for daily AI news.